With the restrictions of the pandemic and uncertainty still looming, most of us are stuck at home. For the first year, we were a bit optimistic and tried our best to get a lot of things done while at home. But as we have just passed the first year mark of the lockdown and, subsequent lockdowns after, many of us are now getting emotionally exhausted with the situation that we are still in. For this video, we sat down with Dr. Raymond Jospeh Escalona, IFM certified functional medicine physician, co-founder of WholeHealth, founder of Nutrigineering, to share with us how we can keep ourselves healthy emotionally, mentally, and physically, and how our environment can help with it. Before we start the interview, Dr. Raymond, could you tell us more a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Yeah, hi Kitten, good morning. Good to be here in your interview today. So, I'm a functional medicine doctor. I've been I've been practicing functional medicine for 6 years.
Oh, wow.
And I take care of people who are chronically ill, who've had, I guess, no success with conventional therapy. So, I'm like the last line doctor that they call. And I just take care of people who are very, very sick and who have a lot of problems. And mostly we try to assess what the root causes of their issues are, whether it's nutritional, it's lifestyle oriented, exercise, stress, sleep, relationships, and purpose, or if there's a hidden toxin or infection in the body that's kind of causing a lot of these dysfunctions. And so mostly I take care of kids with autism, take care of individuals with autoimmune disease, and anything else that has not had success with kind of the standard care therapies. We kind of mixed conventional and an integrative approach to handling those cases.
Actually, very interesting. Usually, people just opt for like one thing, so it sounds very holistic in a way. So that's actually interesting because instead of like going to like many, there's already just one person that you can go to or one program that you can ascribe to or something like that.
Well, hopefully, no. Hopefully, I'm the one guy. But more often than not, I also refer out. No, you can't do it alone. There's a team always. So if I work with patients on a lot of lifestyle changes, we get health coaches to come in. If we're working with patients who don't really move a lot, we get coaches, optimization or physical fitness coaches. We get nutritionists for the food side. But I guess at the end of the day, I'm like the team captain of the care team, whether there are other doctors in the care team or other practitioners. And we try to navigate the space for patients and their families to be able to be successful in their health in this day and age.
Yeah, especially now, it's so important, and there's a lot of emphasis nowadays on really taking care of yourself because of the situation we're in. So anyway, let's just dive right into the questions. So my first question for you is, what is a healthy way to take care of yourself and your family at home? So like also mentally, emotionally, dealing with the fact that we are here in the four walls of our houses and our rooms all the time. So yeah.
Super timely question, and I've been taking care of people during this pandemic for a year now, since we had our lockdowns last year.
Yeah.
And the one thing that I consistently see across all families, no, kasi syempre, if you take care of one person, you take care of the whole family na rin, and then you get referred to the other members, is that the pandemic has actually skewed rhythm and tempo in life. And so if there are a lot of people before that had a certain type of schedule, they go to work, they wake up at a certain time, they do their exercise, they have activities over the weekend. Within the past year or within this time frame, that was just thrown out the window with all the changes that had to be done. And because it's changed so much, there are people that are squeezed into the cracks, so to speak. So people who tried to transition, but they could not. And so because they're stuck in the middle, or there are some individuals or families who are trying to transition but their companies are not transitioning, and so they're kind of stuck into this gray zone where some of them don't want to transition into a new lifestyle. Some of them are transitioning, but the environments around them are not conducive for the transition. And so these are the people who start to get sick. We've seen a lot of patients lately who have had flares of autoimmune disease. We've had kids who have had multiple skin issues and conditions because of this kind of flux in transition. There's a lot of science behind it, which I don't know if you want to get into it, but mostly in my perspective, it's talking to the families and trying to get them to come back into cycles, into regular kind of rhythms and cycles, with despite the pandemic or despite the restrictions that we've been put on.
That's very true. A lot of us had to shift our working spaces, our working schedule. Like I know that before work from home really became a thing because of the pandemic, there were some people. I've actually honestly tried doing that before, freelancing, working from home. So it was easy for me to kind of transition to it. But for other people, it might be hard also because their spaces might not also be conducive to that. As you mentioned, right? Environment also plays a large role in it. So, segueing to our second question. So, how can we make our own spaces be like home again? And maybe we can also go to the other question as well with the whole, as you said, how can we help make our environment, the spaces that we are given, our houses, how can we make it more conducive to like really transitioning to this work from home thing, especially because if you have a family, there you will have children who are studying, you will have the adults who are working and everything. So how can we make that more? How can the environment be more conducive to them? Just to keep sane during this whole time.
Yeah. Well, more so we're realizing that the areas that we built are not conducive for this stuff. With so a lot of the areas, when you talk about the word spaces, kasi, there are two connotations that I think of from the bare minimum. The first is that there's a mental space. There's this perspective of space where you're giving space to yourself for interpersonal development. And then there's also obviously the physical space where you live, where you stay, where you work, where you walk. And both are attuned to one another because, of course, the physical space is dependent on the mental space as well that you create. But more so, I think that most of the spaces that we've crafted are more rigid in structure. There is a set function for this room, and that's what it's supposed to be. And that's the way, really, how things have been built because we never used to have this idea that we'd be locked in, right? And true to the term of having lockdowns, it's like we've been really locked in. And so I really feel for a lot of the people who've had limited spaces, people who live in condos, people who live in enclosed areas, or in areas where there's really not a lot of room for activities. So my perspective then would be, how do we then create, whether in an online sphere, through group practice, through online setting, or through the rearranging of areas within where you live, these adaptable kind of open areas. And mentally, you can do it through meditation. You can do it, I guess, some sort of exercise practice. Physically, it would be from kind of trying to understand what the needs are because the needs have changed with the lockdown. The restrictions have changed, and so how then do we best use what we have to edit it, to apply to what has changed, diba? And that's actually where most of the healthcare field is supposed to be headed because our patients are only as healthy as the environments that they live in. That was a statement that I learned from Dr. Antonio Danz. He's from the UPPGH. And he said, we can't ask people to exercise if there's no park in their area or if the streets are unsafe. We can't ask people to meditate if there's no safe space for them to try to do it. And so I guess that's my answer to the question. To make it feel like home, it has to be able to adapt to the demand that you're dealing with today. And if you're not able to adapt that space to the demand today, then it's never going to feel like home, because it's always going to feel like a stretch or an adaptation to something that's not natural.
Yeah, that's actually true. So then, would you be able to give any advice on how we could be, because as you said, like for example, the bedroom is the bedroom. It's not really supposed to be like your home office, but now we have to kind of stretch that. So how do we kind of navigate that, like figure that out to be more sane? Because like I'm pretty sure, like me, I've tried like working in the dining table, and that didn't work. That didn't work. I just snapped a lot like that. Um, but then I ended up adapting my own room to be like my home office. So, any advice to people on how they can try to um, be able to adapt their spaces, their current spaces, without making it feel too much like a stretch, and how can it still feel like there is, like how we can still feel like there's a part that's still homey, there's a part that can still function as like your schoolroom or your office or your exercise area, something like that.
Yeah, I'm no architect, so I like to answer it kind of from a health perspective.
Yeah, sure.
Let's go back to the idea of cycles, no? In any person's health, the important thing is having some form of cyclical or routine. Because if you have a cyclical schedule, find out that people become healthier because of the fact of repetition, and because of the fact of kind of it's the same thing day in, day out. So in terms of the spaces, I think there has to be some form of cyclical use of space, wherein there is kind of a time, similar to how you have kid classes or kindergarten. There's a time that they go to the kitchen, there's a time that they go to the garden, there's a time that they stay in the room. And this type of movement within that space promotes some sort of change in mindset and some sort of change in boundaries. The opposing concept, though, with this is actually this concept of boundaries. No, boundaries are very tough to place now, especially with the work from home perspective. And I've had a lot of patients that have just burned out within the past year, because even if they're not in the office, they're on call 24/7. There's really no boundaries between life at home, life in the office, because it's one and the same thing. And so, having some area that's kind of set for certain work, and being disciplined enough to do it at that area only would be kind of a good start. Having a set schedule of movement, having a set schedule of interpersonal activities not related to work, not related to things that you normally do. But again, everything I say is easier said than done, to be honest, because especially if the pandemic hits, people get sick, the first thing you're thinking about is survival. Where do you get your food? Where do you get your water? How do you get to pay the bills? So, what I can share is that, I've had patients who've lived some sort of pandemic lifestyle, and they've just gotten sicker and sicker and sicker. I've had patients who had no back issues all their life, and within just a year of working and for the computer, they started having back issues. So, I neck, back, shoulders, and all that stuff. Even I have my own shoulder issue, my neck issue now. So the perspective then is, how do you create a way for your body to do this type of work in a way where it doesn't get injured? Kasi you're doing it so repetitively na consistently na. So, looking into standing desks, looking into pedal chairs, bike chairs, looking into bouncy ball chairs, looking into a lot of these things that can be purchased now, which we didn't really have access to before, could be the start. Because, if you work 12 hours a day and you're doing it standing up, you're doing it walking, you're doing it biking, that then has a big impact on the expression or the health that you have. I think also that at some point, the conditions that are going to be coming up are going to be changing. There's going to be a lot of sedentary illness coming on soon, because of, there were days when I would track even my own caloric burn, working, seeing patients 7-8 hours a day, 7 to 8 calls a day, and you'll see that the mere fact that you're just staying home requires less energy for work because you're just staying home. But in your mind, you're so tired because you're doing so much calls with less movement. So you're just sitting in your same computer, and so that in itself uh, is an issue that we're gonna see. There's gonna be a big rise in obesity, overweight. I've seen patients exercise every day, but because they're working from home, they still gain weight because of the sedentary type of environment.
Yeah, so we really can see that there's still a lot of work to be done, but that we can actually mitigate it with like little things, like as you said, standing desks. I've heard of standing desks before. I've heard it's very good for like posture and everything, but you're right, like in the office space, not a lot of offices would actually go ahead and purchase like a bunch of it. But if you're at home, personally, you can do stuff like that. So anyway, Dr. Raymond, thank you for giving us advice on how we can improve ourselves in this situation right now. Do you have any last words before we end this interview?
Nothing much. Just that I hope people stay healthy, and I hope they start to get good cycles, good kind of habits as this progresses. We don't really foresee any change in the situation till probably middle of this year or maybe till next year.
Oh wow.
But depends really on when we all get the vaccine, we get herd immunity, which is kind of a big question mark at this point. Hopefully we'll get there soon.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think I said everything that I wanted to say, I guess, to answer your questions. I hope that helped a lot.
Oh yes, it did. Yes, and I hope that everybody can see also that we can actually make these little changes right now, just as a start. It might not be, might not help solve all your problems all at once, but just those little changes that we can actually take charge of and start working on will actually help us, in our improve our day-to-day lives just by a little bit. But yeah, thank you so much, Dr. Raymond, for sitting down
You're
with
welcome.
us. Thank you.
Okay, have a great day. Bye.